572-7774 or by email at paralegal@ncc.edu.
Welcome back. You're listening to The Secrets of Success. I'm your host, Bill Horan, and today we're speaking with Mary Abbajay, author of Managing Up. Mary, before you were telling us about some of the objections you get and really discounting them because, as you said, we can talk and moan and groan, but typically those situations aren't going to change either unless we do or we move on. I noticed in the next chapter after that, you talk about taking a look at your boss to decide if your boss is an innie or an outie, and that's INNIE or OUTIE. I want to make sure we're still on a business book with high-quality people here. Are we still talking about bosses, or is this belly buttons?
Yeah, no, we're talking about bosses, yeah. So, what I like people to do is to understand, one way to manage up. For the first way is you really got to figure out, who your boss is, how they like to operate, what are their preferences in the workplace, what are their priorities, and one of many ways into there is to look at their personality type. So one personality type is really understanding the introversion or extroversion, and introversion being the innie and extroversion being the outie. And this is an important personality dynamic because introversion and extroversion at its heart and soul is about energy, right? How you get energized, and often deeply related to how we like to communicate. So understanding if your boss tends more towards introversion or extroversion can really help you communicate and work alongside with their energy as opposed to against and draining their energy.
Now, the outie boss, the innie boss, can you tell us some things that will help us identify which one we're dealing with?
Yeah, so your introverted boss, your innie boss, is going to be the kind of boss, I'm actually an introvert, kind of boss who kind of keeps themselves a little more contained. They probably don't communicate as much, especially face-to-face. They're probably not walking around the office. You may find that they don't give you as much information as you want. They're probably not proactively checking in with you that much, and they're probably using a lot of email. That's your more introverted boss. Because introverts, too much external stimulation drains them, right? Your extroverted boss, on the other hand, probably wants to have lots of long meetings with you. Extroverted bosses tend to process their thoughts out loud, tend to like the brainstorming. They're probably more proactive about checking in, probably walking around the office more, probably love to have team meetings because they get energized by external stimulus. Okay.
And I guess when we come right down to it, we've all seen a little bit of each of those.
Yeah.
And if I'm right, too, they're not 100%. I mean, each side kind of leans occasionally into the other a little bit.
Exactly. And it's important to know which one your boss is, especially if they have a very significant leaning. So, for example, I'm an introvert. And one of my first businesses I ever had was I owned a bar and in Washington, D.C. And when I stopped working at the bar, I hired a manager to manage it. And I would call him, because this was kind of before email was really the thing, every Monday, Bill, and I wanted to know three things. How much money did we wring, who didn't show up for work, and what broke, right? That's all I wanted to know. It would take 40 minutes of a phone call, and I still wouldn't have those answers because he was a raging extrovert. He just wanted to tell me everything about everything. So eventually, it was so exhausting to call him, I stopped calling him. And that's what I mean about understanding your preference. So if you're an extrovert interacting with an introvert, you've got to tamp it down a little bit and not make up stories about the introvert. And if you're an introvert that's working for an extrovert, then you've got to amp it up a little bit and do a little more communicating because you don't want your extrovert boss feeling like they have to drag information out of you.
Let's say we knew a little bit ahead and someone said in that company, if you go to the left door, that's the introverted people. If you go to the right door, is there one that we would prefer, or does one win 54% of the time and the other one loses 46%, or any rule like that?
No, but I think leadership requires extroversion, right? It requires extroversion, a little bit more extroversion than introversion. Not that introverts don't make great leaders, they do. But the challenge is that we make up stories about other styles, right, if we're not used to it. So if your boss is an introvert and they don't feel warm and fuzzy, don't assume they're cold. And if your boss is an extrovert and likes to talk a lot, don't assume that they're just talking to hear themselves talk, right? So it's about understanding and not making up stories and learning how to work with the other type. So, we often tell people, if you're working for clearly an introvert, don't spend a lot of their time wasting their time chit-chatting with them. They don't need it. But if you're working for an extrovert, they like the chit-chat. So being able to understand how you sort of work with that energy.
Now, if we know this and someone's just hearing the show and they're going for an interview tomorrow and they meet their boss and she is nice and chatty and they're an outie and the boss is an outie, is that a recipe, for instance? I shouldn't say no thing will probably be 100% of the time, but is that good for success, or is it like, that's great, you guys are going to talk all the time, nothing gets done, you'll solve all the baseball, football, and recipe problems of the world, but, we're not going to accomplish a lot here.
Yeah, so you're right. There's we call it the outie trap. So when you're too much alike with anybody, because it's good to have a little bit of balance, there are some danger zones you have to watch for. Exactly what you said. I've talked to thousands of people writing this book and doing these workshops, and that is the danger of the extrovert and the extrovert, is they just spend a lot of time talking and then they don't get as much done. So if you're an extrovert, you have an extrovert boss, it's going to be fun, but it's going to be up to you to kind of keep reining back that conversation so that your extrovert boss doesn't take up all of your time just extroverting.
Now, to our audience, I'd like to let you know, if you didn't get it before, our guest today is Mary Abbajay, Abbajay. The book is Managing Up, and Mary's going to tell us about the website and where we can get it.
Yep, the website is managingupthebook.com, and you can buy the book in Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all major booksellers, Walmart, Target, they're all carrying it.
And we always tell our audience, it's great you're listening to the show. We hope you take something away from the show every week, even if it's one or two comments or ideas, and talk about them. But if you want this to be part of your career, if you want to really make some changes, you have to go out and take some action. One action step is to get hold of this book, start reading it, get some other ideas, interchange them with people, and then look at the people going down below you. Are they trying to do this? Can you help them with it? Even if it's 10%, it's going to make your company better, your life easier, and a lot of people are going to have a lot nicer days until you either move on or match up with that boss that's perfect. Now, Mary, you talk about something called the platinum rule. We always hear the golden rule, do unto others as you'll have others do unto you, but what's the platinum rule?
Yeah, so the platinum, by the way, I love you just said about making this a conversation up and down the food chain. It's really great. People are using the book for exactly that, helping people manage up to them. So the golden rule, right, do unto others as you'd like to be done to you, which works great in the workplace if everybody's exactly like you. So the platinum rule is about learning how other people want to be treated and treating them that way, right? So understanding that we all have different preferences in terms of our interaction and our communications and what we need in relationship and how we view work, and being able to learn and not judge, but learn how other people want to interact and see how we can adapt to them. That's really what the platinum rule is.
Mary, I have to tell you, I once did practice interviews with people, and of all the people I interviewed over the years, one really stood out, and I still talk about him when we go back and, to the same group. And when I asked him about his relationship with his boss, and he was a paralegal and was talking about working in a law office, usually anywhere from 3 to 5 lawyers, he told me, he said, my job is to make my boss look good.
That's perfect.
And I thought, how smart of him. And I'm still repeating it. It must be 5 years, maybe 7 years later. But really, if everybody just thought about that, even if you want to go in and have a fight later on, yell and say, you embarrassed me, I look so stupid out there. But to the customer, you or the patient or whoever, you want the boss to look good, because if you put a hole in their opinion, they're not going to have confidence. They're going to give you more trouble. The boss is going to give you more trouble. And probably this problem isn't going to get solved. Whereas if you at least kind of cover for him or her and I guess address it later on, and then you can decide whether you're going to, manage up or get out.
You're exactly right. And you are exactly right. And everyone inside organizations, they all know who the competent people are, because I hear this objection a lot when you're dealing with an incompetent boss. But truthfully, people know who the incompetents are in the organization, and you actually will get more curried favor with the powers that be when people know that you are covering up for the incompetence. And eventually incompetence catches up to you. But yeah, I love that. And it's also important what you just said. It's important to know when it's time to get out.
And again, if that's not for you, if whatever you're doing or the field you're in, maybe it isn't the one to go with, but hey, I guess we have to make a decision. Now, you tell us, I think it's on page 48 in your book, that there's 4 different types of people we're going to come across in the office. Can you give us a brief overview of each?
Yeah, so you have, these are 4 kind of basic work styles, work personalities. So you have what we call the energizer. This is the person with high energy. They're high people. They're fast moving. They want to get tasks done. They just are very energizer, and they could be a little bit of a whirlwind, but they are schmoozers and they get stuff done. Then you have people we call the advancers, who are high task people. They want tasks to get done. They're really impatient. Their motto is just do it. They're not warm and fuzzy, and they just want to see just results. And then we have the third type we see. We call these people the harmonizers. So these are the people who are a little more slower paced. They want to hear from everybody. Teamwork is very important to them. They're not going to make quick, fast decisions, but they're really going to create a very human environment. And then you have the evaluator types. So these are kind of like the Dr. Spock types, who want things to be perfect. They want things to be right. They're slower paced. They're not warm and fuzzy. Accuracy means a lot. They ask you a ton of questions. So, at any given time, you're going to have someone with 1 or 2 of these personality types. And it's really important that you kind of figure out who they are, because they all want to interact with you differently.
Now, let me ask you, like astrological signs, should an advancer go to lunch with the evaluator? Should the harmonizer sit down with the energizer so that they can move fast, but they don't ruffle feathers? Or are there any pairs that should or should not go together?
Well, so the pairs that are going to have the most challenge need to go together. And so the pairs that have the most challenge together are often the advancer and the harmonizers, because they're opposite, and the energizers and the evaluators, because they're opposite. So that could be, when you're opposite like that, that could be either a magical combination if you can value what the other side brings, or it can be the one that's prone to the most friction. But the idea here is to be able to balance out your boss, right, without completely making them, what's the word? Like if you have an energizer boss and they're all full of energy and you are not that way, you don't want to be a wet blanket to the energy, but it's your job to help kind of control and corral the energy in an effective way.
Mary Abbajay, we want to thank you and remind our audience our guest was Mary, Abbajay, Mary Abbajay. Her book is Managing Up. Mary, would you tell us the website once again?
Yes, the website is managingupthebook.com, and you can get the book at Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or any major retailer.
Do yourself a favor, make work a lot easier, and make it easier for your boss. Mary, thanks again for being with us. We'd like to remind our audience that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we'll continue our journey to success.